All right, our last
Jen,
two
do you hate
chapters.
Christmas?
Reversing the Wheel of Samsara is chapter 21. I want you guys to know I reviewed the videos and I apologize, but we managed to skip chapter 18 entirely as a
Nice.
discussion. It's fine. Uh just I want to apologize. We did do that.
Well, I guess
um
nobody noticed, so
yeah, I noticed
I
cuz I
feel
was like
like I
something's not
read
adding up.
chapter 18.
Something's weird.
well,
So these last two chapters have some very solid points. I think they're a very nice little wrap up of the ideas she's done in the book, and kind of were nice to reflect on, given some of my obstacles I've been facing this week. So I appreciated that myself. And I did appreciate that she took a moment to say that while she like really kind of holds Dharma and to a much higher. I think she believes it to be. She doesn't say she thinks it's better than therapy, but I think she does. But she also says that when it makes sense, she does suggest to her students to go to therapy. So I guess I thought that was a nice moment where she paused in the book to say that. Not to dismiss, these tools we have and how it can be an incredibly important tool to get us to skillful means. So I don't know. I just like that she did that. Overall, I resonated personally very hard with this section where she talked about falling into habitual means, because I definitely do that with anxiety brain quite a bit. Anxiety brain has its pattern, it's got its routine, and it absolutely wants to do certain things over and over again because it's like, this is definitely working. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, um, stopping to talk about that to me was interesting. Any thoughts?
Des,
Yep.
you don't have any stream going.
I don't have any. What?
your
Stream.
stream. No
The
book.
stream of the book isn't open.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can see the book. Why can't you see the book?
Presumably, because you haven't clicked the button.
Here you go. Now everyone can see the book.
Yay.
You didn't miss a ton on this page. I did. This is where I was talking about her recommending therapy. And then she just begins her anecdote about the use of habitual means. And then this page is where she starts talking about that. I liked the recommendation of sometimes to knock us out of that desire to fall into our habitual means to do something unfamiliar, because I have tried that before and it absolutely works. Sometimes, like not every time, obviously. If anxiety brain's really going for it, anxiety brain will win. But overall, kind of just choosing to do the make the choice that isn't the one I would normally make is enough. Um, to kind of knock
I
me out
like
of my pattern.
on, I think it's in this page, the bit where she says, like, somehow, without cultivating unlimited friendliness for ourselves, we don't progress along the path.
Mhm.
Another slightly different way of wording it. Like, you have to have unlimited friendliness. It's almost a wording that kind of suggests as if treating yourself like somebody else. And she did say somewhere near there as well, that it's often much easier for us to, yeah, some of
Mhm.
us can accept others right where they are a lot more easily than we can accept ourselves. We
Mhm.
feel that
We,
compassion is reserved for someone else, and it never occurs to us to feel it for ourselves.
Yeah, that is definitely a thing.
Um, yeah, no, I think I do experience that. It is often easier to be have more empathy for others than myself.
Oh, this is what I was looking for. It says maybe the most important teaching is to lighten up and relax. It's such a huge help in working with our crazy mixed up minds to remember that what we're doing is unlocking a softness that is
Mm.
in us and letting it spread. We're
Mhm.
letting it blur the sharp corners of self criticism and complaint.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Unlocking a softness is like such a nice phrase. Not only saying, well, you already have it there, you just have to,
You have
like
to
open it.
unlock it. Like unlocking an achievement in a video game.
It could be, yeah.
But I
um
feel like that may be a more, this
mhm.
may be a more gradual and back and forth process than unlocking an achievement, which
Yeah,
is a
that
one-time thing. But
yeah.
you know, healing isn't a straightforward or one-direction
Hmm.
process.
And I think Pema does a good job of making that clear that she's not seeing it as that like one and done process either. It is a back and forth like you were saying, Ben.
Uh,
Ah.
I did have one part that I was kind of confused what she meant.
Mhm.
Right at the end of this chapter, the last or no, not the, I guess the last paragraph's like two sentences, but the last long paragraph that starts, the Dharma can heal our wounds, our very ancient wounds that come not from original sin, but from a misunderstanding so old that we can no longer see it. I wasn't sure what that was referring to.
I have a sense of what she might mean, but my interpretation was more about the overarching misconceptions that are bred into our culture itself.
I
Like,
feel like it could be that. It could also be, uh, for example, childhood trauma that you
mm,
can no longer clearly recall or have repressed or whatever, but it's still clearly affecting you and you know it's there.
Which, yeah, which I could definitely see. I guess it wasn't clear if she meant something like
mhm,
humans in general and society. We have a misunderstanding that's so old that we didn't even recognize it was there. We need to overcome it, or if it is really on a personal level that just, oh, things happen to us and we get stuck in patterns that we've been doing it so long we don't even recognize
I
that
mean,
there is another way.
she's talking about very ancient wounds. That seems not like something that. I mean, maybe it's personal and that it's repeated over and over through the generations, but it seems to refer to something that is definitely a collective thing.
Yeah.
I can see that. It
yes,
could be relating to, for example, the original misunderstanding of ego itself.
Separation. Yeah, well,
mhm,
separation generally.
Right.
That could be the thing, yeah.
yeah. I thought it was interesting she shared this anecdote real quick before we move on from this chapter of where she was like, "We had an issue. I decided not to do anything because I would normally try to fix it." And I was like, "Wow, what a weird tactic." But then it occurred to me, anecdotally, from my own personal life this week, I have chosen a similar tactic to a situation I'm having on a district level at the school. So, anyway, just as a weird side share for you guys.
No, it does sound very funny, right?
Mhm.
But I almost wonder if she could have written this in a little bit of a different way to make it sound less strange to someone who hasn't actively done the very thing she
Mhm.
has done.
Mhm.
Because it seems counterintuitive, right? And it
It is
seems,
counterintuitive, and yet, um, I'm like I said, I am actively doing something along these lines. So I'm like, ah, yes, I get it, Pima.
Yeah, I definitely recognized that same feeling. And doing nothing, I think maybe it's because that part actually should have been elaborated on slightly. Like,
Mhm.
it's not just doing nothing about your problem, it's that you, by stopping and seeing differently,
Yeah.
you can actually see what's going on and choose something better than panicking and
Mhm.
just doing anything ineffectively. And that
Yes.
the peace and like being able to be perceptive and see the things that you missed and actually understand what's happening, why it's happened, and how to do something differently can't
Mhm.
come when you're scrambling. You need the stillness. And she
Mhm.
didn't, I don't think she explained that quite as well here. So it does sound a little bit goofy.
Yeah. Yeah. The path is
Especially
the
for
goal. Oh, sorry.
oh, yeah, I was going to add, especially she's saying like sometimes you have to just let everything fall apart. But for somebody who's been in the situation, they're like, yes, I agree. But for
Yeah.
somebody who hasn't, who's terrified of that exact thing, I can't imagine this chapter and that kind of approach to the anecdote actually helping encourage them to do that.
Mhm.
I think it would just scare somebody into, no, you just don't understand. You
You
know,
don't understand me, mom.
you don't understand. I can't let that happen. You know, if
Yeah.
everything will fall apart if I don't do it, then I can't let that happen. Then I can't stop no matter what it does, even if it kills me, you know.
Even if it
And that,
kills me.
yeah. Mm. Anyway,
Yes.
yeah, we can go to the next one.
So our last chapter of the book is the path is the goal, and she says she gives us an introduction into where the title for this chapter comes from, and that um, there is a saying that everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but it's also said that the path itself is both the ground and the fruition. So one sometimes reads the path is the goal. I appreciated this explanation because I've heard a couple of these sayings, but to hear it kind of put yet another way was interesting insight into its like perhaps more contextually appropriate meaning, I guess. I always like this sort of thing where because it's interesting learning some of these teachings given their origins are not in my native language. And so there's often nuance and context that is I'm afraid I'm missing. So I appreciate these moments. And then we've got some people in voice chat who this isn't their native language either. And so they're like 3 steps removed at this point. And oh, I can't even imagine the mental hulu like hoops.
Yeah.
Is it more difficult, or is it in some ways even possibly easier? Because I think often if it's our native language, we can get really caught up in the words, like in the
Mhm.
wording that's used, instead of the what's behind the word.
Okay.
Oh, they've used a specific term which means this, but maybe that's not quite what they're saying, and just trying to point, again, the finger pointing at the moon kind of thing. Well, it's not quite what they wanted to say, but it doesn't really matter as long as we see what they were trying to tell us. And the things they're trying to tell us are often quite abstract and difficult to explain.
Mhm.
And if I almost, I'd be interested to hear, is it sometimes easier to see, oh, they're talking about this thing and it's not really about the specific words, and whether or not a particular phrase has a nuance that is communicated well or translated well into another language, but then able to just understand it maybe a little more easily or more quickly than somebody who would get like stuck in the actual words that are being said.
I'm not sure. That's at least for me. I don't think that's the case. We have always to consider that there is always meaning going to be lost in translations, and so it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't matter if it's translated into my native language or translated into a different language. Every language, every word in every language or in many languages have slightly, subtly different meanings, and yeah, so the it may vary in what details or what subtle meaning may be lost depending on the language you're translating to, but yeah, meanings and subtleties are going to be lost either way.
Mm.
Cool. All right. Wisdom is whatever is going to happen to us today. I like this because I often am a fan of going back to the thought of, in many ways, we already have all the tools we need to get to enlightenment.
It's
And,
also a really powerful way of reframing everyday stuff, because if you viewing it like, oh no, something terrible happened today and that's awful and now I feel awful,
mm-hmm,
that's one way of looking at it. But when you're looking at it, okay, this was a lesson, or maybe there is a lesson to be found here, and it certainly did teach me something, then it's you can approach it a bit more with uh,
yeah.
detached curiosity and maybe not take it so personally.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Too many buttons. All right. Let's see. My brain is catching up. When we find ourselves in a mess, we don't have to feel guilty about it. Instead, we could reflect on the fact that how we relate to this mess will be sowing the seeds of how we will relate to whatever happens next.
Yeah,
We can make
that's
ourselves miserable or we can make ourselves strong. Sorry,
Oh,
man.
that one I like.
Um, I think this can be a really good reminder during times of obstacles, right? Or when you want to push real hard against what's coming your way.
mm,
At least I find this to be true. Um, I have sat with this mindset a lot of times as a meditation. In fact, I have never worded it quite like she has here, but this has been a common meditation for me. So I appreciate that some time was spent on it in the book. Once again, she brings up loving kindness um, to remind us and encourage precision and gentleness, as she puts it. And I thought that was cool. I often think of mindfulness as including precision, but have never consciously applied the word to it. So to see it in a sentence was kind of like a little brain vibe. I was like, oh yeah. Let's see. And I highlighted this concept as a personal summary of, do we relate to our circumstances with bitterness or with openness? Would anyone like to make any commentary about chapter 22?
I do think it's interesting that simply asking how are we looking at our experience is in some ways radical,
Mhm.
because on the surface it seems obvious.
Mhm.
You look at your life, you look at the things happening, but in practice, that's rarely the case. And I suppose I don't know if it's ironic, but it's at least fascinating that that has to be said or written, I suppose, because it's not intuitive, even though it sounds intuitive.
Mhm.
I suppose that just highlights the problem in the first place, ignorance, etc.
Well, it's that same imagery we're often brought to, I think, in different books we've read of like using a mirror or it becomes a mirror.
Mm.
And I think it's just another way of showing us ourselves, you know? Isn't that what
Mm-hmm.
Dharma does so often? Is just make us look. And that's how I think I've begun to see it, these sorts of questions in the book. An opportunity to see my own reflection.
Yeah,
Overall, since we have now ended the book, how did we like the book?
I
As
liked it a
a
lot.
yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of for you, though.
I am for my next book for these talks. I think that we will choose a non-Pema book because I have hit her quite a bit over the last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I will try to find someone else's teachings to look through.
I can dig it.
Any final comments before I hit the stop recording button?
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Happy holidays indeed.